Chapter 45. Oli had escaped the wood along this same path once before, but back then he had run from, and now he ran to. 11 years before, he had run from danger, terror, and death, the image of his mangled father chasing him all the way. None of that had changed. All this time later, he was still afraid and still leaving the dead behind. But it wasn't fear for his own life that he ran now. He ran to his sister and to the slim hope that maybe, just maybe, he could finally save someone. It was this new power giving him this hope. The evidence of it manifested everywhere, for the wood did not appear the same as it had been for him hours ago. Before, he had been an interloper, understanding the warning signs and paths only enough to stay barely ahead of the wood and its traps. But now he could feel everything all around him all at once. Or maybe sense was a better word for it. It was the feeling of someone familiar walking up behind him, even if he couldn't see them. An awareness of their presence would be palpable in the familiar smell, the sound of their steps, the rhythm of their breathing, the way their shadow shifted in the corner of his vision. Familiar, even if unseen. That's how the wood was. It wasn't a seeing exactly, but a deeper knowing. He could sense moles and badgers burrowing in holes nearby, giant cats prowling in the treetops, a fox fleeing, and a whole colony of spiders skittering about wildly. He could sense the trees, too, and their roots tunneled beneath dirt and soil. An entire world lay bare for him to sift through with only a mere thought. But though he could sense the wood, only the vines noticed him in return. He could feel them constantly leaning toward him, their presence thick upon the forest. But it wasn't antagonistic like before. They didn't want to trap him. Instead, they bowed to him. No longer did they reach out and try to trip or ensnare him, but they made a path before him with their tips pointed downward in submission. And they looked different now, too. Still green and thorny, still pulsing with purple blood, but now the vines swirled with red lines of light, vibrant and beautiful against the dark canopy above. Like the light that he had seen in Leone and Tall, but red and pulsing. Still, despite those changes, the sight of the vines made his skin crawl and itch. He gave them a wide berth whenever he could. Ollie made it to the wall while still at a dead sprint. He felt good, energized, and strong. Nothing had gotten in his way. Nothing had even tried to stop him. He scrambled up a low, broken part of the wall and leapt down. Frigid wind pushed against him, reminding him the world outside of the deep was still on the edge of winter. He almost began running again, but paused. His sense of the deep had left him, as if the wall were a divider of more than just stone. All the beasts in the vines he had felt moments before, they had suddenly disappeared. In their place was a whole host of new sensations stretched out before him. It disoriented him, and he fell to one knee as his mind tried to take it all in. Like a finger tracing a map, his mind traced the world spread out before him, sensing and cataloging what he found. The vines appeared weaker here, thinner, less active. In fact, there was less life in general compared to what he had sensed in the deep. But his senses also stretched further, and he could feel the awareness taper away into the distance. It seemed like standing on a hilltop, watching the world fade into the horizon. Ollie stood and tried to keep moving, but he made it only 2 steps before his head pounded with a new awareness. Something approached from ahead, something he had no name for. Yet he felt as though he should know. When he focused his mind on that presence, his imagination conjured up images of rot and maggots. But he also felt the same pulse of vibrance as he had with the vines. "What in damnation are those?" Ollie muttered, his breath misting before him. "The Yelmes, of course." The thought was not his, but came from elsewhere, as though someone had planted the words in his imagination. He knew who it was, and at the thought his mind reeled with anger. Stardavna, it seemed, could speak. Ollie hissed, "You!" Oh, darling, don't be angry. This is harder than you think. Get out. Easier said than done, and besides, you will need me. Ollie wanted to argue, to threaten, and to rage, but Layla was back and watchful. An ancient monster stood between him and her. And maybe, just maybe, he really did need Star Davna in order to save his sister. With a grunt, Ollie took off westward, chasing that foreboding sense in the distance. The smell of ozone filled the air, and Ollie could faintly hear the crackling of lightning. It felt like walking into a storm, though minus the wind and rain. He ran faster, perhaps faster than he ever had before. His whole body teemed with energy and life without end. It was intoxicating and comforting, and he felt his confidence surge. Who could stop him? A few moments later, he caught sight of one of the Yelmes for the first time. In one regard, they looked like mere humans, in poor clothing and weathered cloaks, except they were clearly more than just humans. Their hands and swords crackled with energy, and the lines of light flowed through their bodies. They each had one eye that burned bright yellow, gleaming beneath the shadow of their cowls, just as Tall had said. He could see two of them running toward him, weaving around trees, but he sensed more in the distance. 4, maybe? He wasn't sure. He wasn't certain. Just get close, darling. Ollie knocked an arrow. He had no intention of getting anywhere close to someone with a sword, no matter what Star Davna said. Still running, Ollie would be close enough. Ollie would be close enough to shoot an arrow in moments. But before he got the chance, one of the two Yelmes lifted a horn to her lips and blew. The sound reverberated throughout the trees, and birds scattered from the branches high above, chirping and cawing as they went. Ollie could see the lines of light in the Yelmes better now. It was similar to the lines he had seen in Tall and the princess, each made up of a complex web of white and yellow lights, except for their hands and weapons. Those were covered in lights of bright red, like those in the vines. Get close, Star Davna said, the words pushy and urgent. Ollie loosed his first arrow. He'd aimed it at the one with the horn, right at the base of the throat. She'd sidestepped it easily, dropping her horn back to her side. The other dark one, a broad-shouldered man with thick braids in his hair, charged. As he ran, he swiped his free arm forward, and a streak of lightning seared the air and shattered a tree a half dozen paces to Ollie's right. There was a pop crack, and the world became light and noise. Ah! Ollie cried, stumbling backward. He couldn't see. Everything was white and blurred, as though he'd been staring into the sun. Blind, he would be cut to pieces, and he wouldn't even be able to fight back. He blinked over and over again, trying to clear his vision, but nothing more than vague shapes formed before him. The threads are still bright, little stray Azar. Use them. Ollie blinked and looked again. The world still appeared blurred and pale, but Star Davna was right. The lines of light inside the Yelmes stayed clearly visible, easy to make out in the vines and the treetops and forest floor and in the moving shapes running toward him. Off to the side, dissipating fast from the lightning strike, floated 1,000 little black lines. Reach out and snap their threads. They're close and unguarded. Fools, they have sent children after us. Her words didn't make any sense. Ollie hadn't the slightest clue what it meant to snap a thread. All he knew now was he could at least make out the enemy. He backed up, knocking another arrow. He couldn't see his bow well, but he let instinct guide him and loosed at the Yelmes charging him. The lines of light flinched, and Ollie thought he even saw a small white one break. But the figure kept running, kept coming, new red lights swirling into existence. Stop waiting, reach out and snap his threads. I don't know how. If you can see them, you can break them. The Yelmes closed in, and Ollie's vision had cleared enough to see it as a black blob bearing down on him. With a cry, Ollie tossed aside his bow, pulled his knife free, and dug the toe of his boot into the dirt to brace himself. Ollie could make out the man's sword hefted into the air, ready to strike. He leapt forward, thrusting his shoulder into its midsection before it could bring its blade to bear. He couldn't win a sword fight with a knife, but Ollie could bring the fight to the ground where his knife would work to his advantage. Ollie grabbed and twisted the man about until his feet lost balance. Then Ollie shifted his weight and slammed him to the ground, sliding his knife upward towards his throat. The Elmas grabbed Ollie's wrist, keeping the knife at bay, as Ollie leaned his weight into the handle, driving it slowly downward. Ollie's vision had mostly returned, and he could see the Yelma's eyes now. They were not unlike Anej's, except the bright blue had been swapped for a fiery yellow. And there was fear there, the kind of fear that came from seeing death. Ollie had expected a monster, a beast like the wolves and bears of the wood. He hadn't expected Yelmes to be so much like him. "Snap his threads, you fool!" I could see the lines of light more clearly now. They truly were as thin as thread, though the brilliance of their light made them look larger at first. They moved of their own accord, and they were incredibly long. What Ollie had mistaken for many little threads was actually a complex weaving of one or two long threads. The white twisted and twirled about the man's midsection, and the yellow more around his face, arms, and legs. Ollie could feel the power of the red thread hovering around the man's hands like heat from a fire. It seemed to have substance, like it was more than just light. The tip of Ollie's blade closed in on the man's throat, slowly breaking skin. In a moment, his muscles would give, and Ollie leapt backward as a sword slashed through the air where his head had been. He rolled to the ground and stood, the woman with the horn bearing down on him with another strike. Ollie dodged to the side and then tried to tackle her like he had done with the man, but she dodged and sliced him along the shoulder, forcing him to spin away. "Cut their threads before they tear you to pieces." "How?" The woman sidestepped around Ollie, forcing him to put his back to either her or to the man stumbling to his feet. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Ollie could sense the other four closing in on them moments away. "Look at your hand." Ollie dropped his gaze. Around his fingers floated a small red stream of light. It wasn't much, but it danced with power. "Use it." Realization dawned as Ollie saw the red light. He wasn't sure if it had always been there, or if he'd somehow taken it from the Elmes when he had pinned him, but it was there now, and it quickly formed itself into the shape of a knife without any command or impulse from Ollie. The woman shifted her feet, readying for a lunge. As fast as he could manage, Ollie flung his arm forward, throwing the thread knife toward the mass of white light at the woman's center. The thread knife jolted forward faster than any arrow Ollie had ever shot, and ripped apart the mass of white threads in the Yelmes. Layla screamed, clutching at her head as pain leapt through her. "What's wrong with her?" Ulian asked, voice distant. "The spindle is spinning," Inej grunted, lifting her into the air, cradling her like a child. "We have to keep moving." "Her nose is bleeding. Is that normal?" It's her first time." "Will she die?"
"No, not yet."
"How much of this can she take?"
"Forget it, Ulian. Keep moving."
The Elmes woman's eyes went wide and her mouth slack as she crumbled. The lightning around her palms faded and the red threads disappeared into the air. "Grab them." Ollie reached out for one of the red lights and it shot toward him, wrapping itself around his hand. The other Elmes scrambled to his feet, the broken shaft of an arrow sticking out from his chest. Red threads spun around the wound, filling in the broken gaps of yellow and white lines. Ollie had just started to turn toward him when the man let out a savage cry and threw his sword toward Ollie, who stumbled backward as the blade spun wildly by. The Elmes didn't let Ollie recover, but spun his hands into a complex maneuver, sending lightning and red lines shooting out towards Ollie. Without thinking, Ollie dropped to the ground and covered his ears and closed his eyes as the world exploded in light and sound. He could hear a tree shatter, and Ollie opened his eyes to see a tree falling between him and the man, spraying Ollie in chips of wood. Everything smelt of smoke and fire and ozone. The Elmes leapt over the tree trunk before it had fully settled, his hands stretched out towards Ollie. Throwing his hands out, Ollie screamed and shot the red threads around his hand outward. This time he didn't send a sharp knife-like set of threads, but a haphazard ball of force, which knocked the man into a tree a few paces away. Ollie didn't wait, but scrambled over to the Elmes before he could recover, driving his knife downward and ending the Elmes' life. Ollie stood back up, heart racing and hands covered in red light and in blood. He looked around, sensing the four others before he saw them a bowshot away. They approached cautiously, giving Ollie wide berth as they spread out, working to surround him. 2 had almost killed him more than once. He doubted he'd survive a fight with all 4. Take power from within. You have it to spare. Ollie clenched his fists and looked down. More red lines appeared around his fists, summoned from thin air. He felt as if he had pulled them from a distant place, tugging them slightly until they pulled free and flowed around him. The 4 Yelmes charged in unison, coming from all sides with lightning and swords. Ollie shaped the threads into daggers and threw them out as before. It felt easy, almost effortless. All 4 of the dark ones collapsed moments later. Their white and yellow threads snapped, leaving only the red thread behind to squirm in the air like worms. In a moment, in a heartbeat, they were all dead. Their threads are your boon. Take it. It is the cycle. And Ollie did. As simple as breathing, he held out a hand and pointed to each corpse, one after another, collecting the red wisps as they began to fade. When he finished, his hands and arms swirled with power, latent energy filling his bones. It thrilled him in a way nothing else ever had before. He could save Layla with this. He could fight these monsters and princesses and anything else that threatened them. He could snap anyone's threads and leave them lifeless with nothing but a thought and the flick of his wrists. For the first time in his life, Ollie had power.